Hi guys, it is super early Monday morning. I woke up because I've got a splitting headache and I noticed a lot of comments saying that the video from last night doesn't play on Apple TVs or apps for smartphones. So I wanted to do a quick re-upload, and this is just to let everybody know that this is in fact the same video I uploaded last night. So yeah, here we go. Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY sailboat refit weekend here aboard good old Athena. In last weekend's video, I pulled the engine, removed the sail drive and got rid of the old crusty diesel tank. Unfortunately, I also discovered 3 mysterious holes in the cabin sole that caused a bit of water to leak into the engine compartment. Since last week, I've found at least one more leak in the cockpit, and if I'm to spiffy up the engine compartment with a bit of paint, I can't have water dripping all over the place. Hence, this somewhat lackluster attempt at a full cockpit enclosure. Admittedly, this thing looks ghetto to the umpteenth degree, but I only needed to stay up there for a couple of weeks. Now, before anybody starts making fun of my clearly not amazing tent building skills, I would like to say that this thing survived near gale force winds last night, so I think it'll do. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, I hope I'll be able to apply the first coat of primer in the engine compartment this weekend. And I've got something here that should make that job a little bit easier. Ta-da! Glorious, glorious new tools. Or, well, new tool and new vacuum. As you could see on the outside of the box, this is a vacuum. And unlike the vacuum I've been using for the last 2 years, this one is actually intended to be hooked up to tools for dust management. There's a long hose, vacuum tube, floor nozzle, an elbow, a crevice nozzle, some doodads for securing the hose to the vacuum, and of course the ever important manual. This thing looks pretty fancy. My old vacuum didn't have any of these knobs or an outlet. I think I might just have a quick peek in the manual. For those of you playing along at home, this is the GAS 35 MAFC, and this is a wet and dry vacuum. And to be honest, I should have picked up one of those a long time ago, but yeah, here we are. Okay, let's see. So putting this thing together looks relatively simple. Okay, I think this guy is ready for some glorious, glorious sanding this weekend. And speaking of sanding, that is an excellent segue. I've been lusting after what is inside of this lovely blue box here for almost 2 years, I think. We'll come back to this little box in a few minutes. Ta-da! A GEX 150 Turbo. This thing is supposed to be the bee's knees. Like the name implies, this thing uses 150mm sanding sheets rather than the standard 12cm ones, so that means you're probably gonna get done sanding faster. The thing that has me the most excited about this sander is its 2 modes. It's got forced drive and free running mode. The first one is for removing a lot of material quickly, and the second one is for detail work. I think this is going to speed up the process of sanding the large flat surfaces inside of the engine compartment by quite a lot. I am really excited to take this for a spin. There is still the small matter of this box. These are some of those newfangled sanding nets. So these are not like regular sandpaper where it's kind of like sand stuck on paper, but rather it's a net. From what I've heard, the big upside to using these is that you get less dust in the air, but I guess we'll find out this weekend with my spiffy new vacuum. Also included in that little box was this special backing pad for those newfangled nets. Full disclosure, the products you've just seen, the vacuum, the sander, and the accessories, were all provided to me by Bosch free of charge. But there are no strings attached to that deal, so I'll be sure to share my honest opinion with you guys, as I've always done in the past. I do a fair bit of sanding, and I honestly think the 150 Turbo could be a game changer for me, but we'll find out later this weekend. I think there's a 50-50 chance I'm either going to be dreaming about my girlfriend tonight or my spiffy new 150 Turbo. I'm sure Ava won't get upset by that joke, right? I mean, it is a 150 Turbo. It's pretty dang sexy. Well, I'm gonna head back to Obelix and take Yukul for a long walk, but I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Good morning, guys. It is Saturday morning and it is colder than a well digger's behind, but why don't we just go ahead and get started and take a closer look at the engine compartment. This little slice of heaven is where I'm going to be spending my weekend. No doubt it's going to be cold and uncomfortable, but hopefully I'll make a bit of progress. There are a few things I'm a little bit concerned about. Up here in the far end of the engine compartment, there is a little bit of discoloration on the plywood. I'm hopeful it's just discoloration and not rot. On the port side, there's another blob of discoloration, and I think that might be diesel that leaked out from the diesel filter that was right there. And I'm guessing that's kind of bad news because I'm not sure how well the primer is going to adhere to diesel-soaked plywood. Of course, I won't really know what's going on inside the engine compartment before I have everything nice and sanded, so that is first up on my to-do list for today. I don't have any 150mm sanding sheets in 80 grit, so I'm going to swap out the standard backing plate for this one that's intended for use with the fancy grids. I'll have plenty of time to do a comparison between the regular old boring kind of sandpaper and the newfangled nets. Okay, ready for glorious, glorious sanding. Speaking of things that are convenient, this vacuum will turn on and off as I turn the sander on and off. That is a feature I didn't have in my household vacuum, and it was something I was kind of missing. The vacuum is set for 35mm hose and automatic filter cleaning is enabled. I think we're ready. Wow! I mean, I don't know if the mic picked that up, but that loud knocking sound, I'm assuming that's the automatic filter cleaning. That sounds very effective. I mean, the vacuum was jumping. But yeah, let's take it for a spin. That is looking a whole lot better already. The black stuff that was way back there in the aft end of the engine compartment turned out to be just a bit of discoloration. For me to do a really good job of spiffing up this engine compartment, I do need to temporarily remove the green hoses down there that are connected to the drains from the cockpit. I can't access the area in here with those in the way. Oh. Don't you guys just love those jobs where you think it's gonna take 5 minutes and then 2 hours later you're just barely getting started? Those two green hoses are the ones I temporarily need to disconnect. But for me to get to those, I had to remove all of this stuff. The silver lining, of course, being the fact that I am no longer cold. Oh. Both of the hoses are disconnected, and I've picked up most of the debris that was floating around down there. Huh, not quite yet. Ta-da! After just one liberal application of hose be gone, all your hose problems are solved. Fun little side note, when I removed the port side hose, this fitting that the hose was connected to just spun freely, so that means the bedding compound here, yeah, that's not worth anything. This must have been leaking like a sieve, but the boat is tilting a little towards starboard, so I'm guessing that's why I haven't seen any leaks from this. In a rare bit of good fortune here aboard Athena, turns out this is solid laminate. This out here is cord, but this is solid laminate. And this being solid laminate, if this starts leaking, it's not going to damage the core that isn't there, so yay!
I don't really want to bed these with butyl tape because the cockpit is going to see a mix of petroleum-based products, which is not great in combination with butyl. But I am going to rebed these sometime next year, so this is just temporary. It is on there as tight as I can get it for now. Let's head back down below. You know what, before we do that, let's just take my new vacuum for a spin. It is a little bit dusty down there. Here inside the cockpit locker, there's pretty good access to the rudder post, which is certainly going to be nice in a couple of weeks when I go to drop the rudder. And as you can see, the rudder post itself looks like it's stainless steel, but then there are some mild steel parts in here too. I don't know if there's a good reason for this to be mild steel. I'll have to check with someone that's smarter than I am. It looks pretty crusty in here. As you can see, there's lots of rust flakes everywhere. And if I'm to have a chance of painting this, I definitely need to clean this up thoroughly. This is turning out to be way more time consuming than I thought it would be. I still need to sand that side, scrub and sand the inside of the hull, then I need to degrease everything, and then I can paint. I think if I just get all of the prep work out of the way this weekend, I should be pretty pleased. As you might be able to tell, I am slowly but surely running out of daylight. I think the last thing I want to do today is just to give the hull a good scrubbing. That way at least there's a chance it'll be dry tomorrow and I can continue sanding. Good morning, guys. It is Sunday morning. Being the ever optimistic kind of guy, I've brought along some primer. This is the same primer I used on the deck. It's Sigma Cover 280, and this is a low temperature hardener I can use in combination with Sigma Cover 280. Just a quick little note, don't worry about the fact that this says Sigma Prime 200. I got this from a local shipyard. They reassured me that it's the same hardener that you'd normally use with Sigma Cover 280. Sigma Prime is just a Pro-labeled version. I'm doubtful that I will actually get to apply primer to the inside of the engine compartment today, but I brought it along because you never know. I spent 2 hours last night scrubbing the inside of the hull and it looks a lot better. So why don't I just go ahead and get started on sanding the port side. Things are starting to look a lot better in the engine compartment, and while I was crawling around in there, I also started sanding the inside of the hull. So far, the 150 Turbo is a complete joy to work with. This thing is awesome. And these newfangled nets here are pretty cool too. In fact, I ordered a box of 50 of these last night. As you can see here, I've sanded into some kind of sticky mess that has clogged up the net. So clearly these are not made out of magic. They will clog, but for keeping dust out of the air, they're pretty freaking awesome. And when you buy them 50 at a time, they aren't really that expensive. Remember a little earlier in this video where I pointed to this area where the diesel filter used to be and said that I thought this plywood might have been soaked by diesel? Yeah, something is definitely going on here because when I sanded this area, the net clogged instantly. This is what a brand new net looks like. It's kind of white in color. And then this is what the net I used to sand that small area of the engine compartment looks like. It's, yeah, kind of greased up. None of the other areas I've sanded have done anything like this to the net, so clearly something is going on with that area where the diesel filter used to be located. Just to make sure we're all on the same page here, this is not to fault the net. The same thing would have happened for sure to regular sandpaper. All of this is just to say that I now know for sure that some diesel have soaked into that plywood. And that leaves me with a decision to make, because I don't think there is any way I can get the diesel out of there, well, any feasible way. I could try scrubbing it with some kind of solvent, but that's not gonna work. I could try packing it with sawdust or kitty litter. That's not gonna work either. I could maybe draw out the diesel by putting the area on the vacuum and heating it with my silicone heating mat, but that is gonna be a lot of work to set up. Bearing in mind that everything from this little piece of wood down here and forward is gonna get covered in sound dampening material, I am very inclined to just go ahead and paint this area and hope for the best, because in case it starts peeling, well, you're not going to be able to see it because it's covered by sound insulation. I've been happily sanding away in the engine compartment for about an hour, and as you can see, I've got most of the inside of the hull ready for paint. I was sanding the area down here when I noticed something peculiar up here. Nice and firm, rock solid, that's awesome, and then spongy as all heck. With this boat, it just doesn't end. It's freaking relentless. Sure, I mean, it's just one tiny area of plywood that's rotten, and replacing this piece of plywood isn't that big of a deal when I've got the rudder out of here, but still, my God. It may seem silly to get frustrated over replacing a small piece of plywood like that, but the thing is, I'm really hoping I'll be able to get Athena back in the water this summer, and that's already a very ambitious plan depending on what's going to happen with the wet stringers and wet floors. And that piece of plywood is just one more thing on top of that ever-growing list. Fortunately, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend hand sanding to prevent depression. You know, to get at those hard-to-reach spots. I think that's good enough for the area back here. I've decided to hold off on sanding this piece here until I've removed the piece of plywood up here with that bit of rut in it, because then I can simply just shove the 150 turbo down there and it'll take minutes rather than hours. And that leaves me with only the forward part of the engine compartment to take care of. I'm not going to sand this as thoroughly as I've sanded this area up here, because this was old paint, and I think this is new paint from when they put in the new engine. There are still the remnants of an old backing plate I'll have to deal with here, and I will have to rough up the surface, but the paint down here doesn't come off in big flakes like this stuff up here, so I think this is good. As you can hopefully see, the glorious hand sanding is progressing nicely. I've decided to make a little change though. I'm going to remove that piece of wood that the old tank sat on top of. It's looking pretty crusty, it's soaked in diesel, and I can certainly do a better job than that. Of course, that means waiting until the spring to install the new tank, but that's okay. I was going to wait to do that anyways because of that rotten piece of plywood. Ta-da! Stick be gone. Now it's back to glorious hand sanding. Oh, look! It's snowing outside. That's kind of cool. Enough procrastinating, back to sanding. Sorry guys, I am out of time. I was really hoping I could get the first coat of primer on the inside of the engine compartment. That would have made for an excellent ending for this video, but yeah, I am out of time. I'll continue sanding while the video is rendering, and then tomorrow after work I can come back and hopefully apply that first coat of primer. I guess now that I won't be painting until tomorrow at the earliest, it wouldn't hurt to ask you guys if any of you know of a bona fide way of getting diesel out of plywood. Something that you know to work, not just theories, but something that you know will absolutely work. If you've got something, I would love to hear it. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'll give you guys a proper review of my new 150 Turbo once I've had a chance to use it for an extended period of time. So far, it's awesome, and I think it's going to come in very useful when I go to finish the sides of the cabin tub next summer. And of course, the same goes for the vacuum. I've only been using the vacuum and the 150 for maybe 4 hours this weekend, and I just don't think that's enough time for me to really form an opinion. I think that is basically going to be it for this video. Like I said, I am out of time. I realized that I again didn't get around to answering the questions from Patreon about the 2 smaller hatches up on deck. We will get to that. I think I'll put that somewhere in the beginning of next weekend's video. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!